Three things you need to do to survive a financial crisis. Number one, save. Number two, invest. Number three, manage your debt. That's how you know when trouble comes, you will survive it. If you don't do those two things, you will completely get wiped out. My name is Lawrence Tole, and I want to welcome you to my channel, Financial Sense TV, for all things business, all things investment, all things personal finance, and all things personal development, so we can be the very best that we are meant to be. All right? If you followed me, you know I often say that risk is a part of life. All right? It will always be there. You need to learn to manage it. Okay? Troubled times like now, like the present moment where we've seen COVID. We've lived with COVID for almost 2 years now. It's disrupted everything, every aspect of your life. Everything that you figured could go wrong went wrong with COVID. We've had people lose relatives who got infected in just a very short space of time and found life was not what it used to be. Life totally changed. Okay? The way you work has changed, if you are even in a job. For most people, they got laid off. So you've got to prepare yourself, not just for any crisis like the one we're in, for just anything you can imagine that could go wrong. All right? So the first rule of personal financial survival in a crisis is, number one, you've got to save. All right? You must have a savings plan. Okay? When you earn your money, most personal finance teachers will tell you, save at least 20%. All right? And your savings must consist of three things. Firstly, you must have an emergency fund. And the size of an emergency fund ideally should be at least 6 months of living expenses. First, when I came across that, I thought, look, that's just unrealistic. If you have an emergency fund that big, you should also have some kind of insurance. But we've learned that from this COVID crisis that your savings can actually save you. All right? And that 6-month living expense emergency fund, it's not a marathon. You won't start today and get there tomorrow. It's gradual. You've got to do it gradually. All right? Great. So that's the first part. You must have emergency savings that you can have access to at a very short notice. And it can be for anything, okay? A child can get sick. You could develop a fault at your house. You could develop car trouble. You could have car trouble. A savings fund literally protects you from all the curveballs that life can throw at you. So you've got to have one. It's not something that is only for people with a lot of money. No, you need it. You need it. It's not for people who are formally employed, okay? Anyone, if you're doing business for yourself, if you're running a one-man business, you need an emergency fund. If you are a high-ranking executive, you need an emergency fund. If you are self-employed, you need an emergency fund. That's the first component of your savings. The next part should be, if you're a guy who's not had a house yet, you should be committing resources towards that. If you're in a functioning economy that's not like Zimbabwe, if you're in South Africa, if you're in England, or if you're in wherever, you know that to be able to get a mortgage, you should have a certain portion of your own money that you can commit, and it's called a down payment. All right? That you need to save for, in addition to your emergency fund. All right? You've got to do it. The third thing that you need to make sure is part of your savings is the money that you will then invest in other things to improve your financial picture. That should start off from your savings. Your savings are what ultimately become your investments. All right? So, of the three things that you need to do to survive any crisis, a personal financial one, or just any crisis in general, you must be prepared financially. And the first step is your savings. Your savings consist of three things. Number one, your emergency fund. And we know, because I've just shared with you, that your emergency fund should have money that you can have easy access to. All right? Secondly, save towards your house. If you're not a homeowner yet, or your first time home buyer, you should be saving. You should have a portion of money set aside for the down payment of your house. Number 3, you must have savings set aside, an amount set aside for when you will eventually invest, if you are not already. All right? The reason why I'm sharing this message with all of you is that you've got to be able to start this as a culture. Make it a habit. Make it a habit to save. Make it a habit to invest. Make it a habit to manage your debt. If you're already in a crisis now, my advice won't help you there and then, because you won't start saving today and survive a crisis tomorrow. You need to have started over a longer period of time. Second thing you need to do to survive a financial crisis: invest. For heaven's sake, you won't succeed financially if investing is not part of the strategy. What is investing? It means you commit money now, okay, into a risky business, or a business that involves risk. All businesses involve risk. Into a portfolio of shares, into a portfolio of property, even into livestock, okay? Anticipate